All right, hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Eurosnob podcast. My name is Alex John, and today I'm joined by our good friend Zach. Zach, how are you doing today?
Great, man. Great. How are you?
Not too bad, man. Holiday season, can't complain. Things are busy, and it's a busy holiday period for the Premier League and for Arsenal as well. So I know we've got a lot to talk about. Been kind of a busy past couple weeks. Obviously we had the game against Bournemouth, Spurs, and United, and we're not really going to get into the Bournemouth game too much. That was one of those kind of grinded out games, and we got the win in the end. So that was certainly promising because Bournemouth have been surprisingly good this season. So I think that's a win that actually is going to look better as the season goes on. But we kind of wanted to get into the Tottenham and United games because I think for me, when I was looking at the fixture list, this was kind of the period that I circled this 3 game stretch, but specifically these 2 games, because I thought, if we could get 4 points out of these 2 games, that would be promising for top 4 chances for the rest of the season. But, obviously approaching it just from a big picture, what was kind of your thought coming into these last 2 games, just before the games are played? What was kind of your thinking in terms of where the team was and your expectation?
Well, after the Bournemouth game and the Europa League game, both leaving on wins, good wins, I'll say that. I was feeling really confident going into Tottenham. I didn't really expect us to batter them the way we did, but I can't tell you that I wasn't surprised and excited by that. But I was feeling really good going into it.
Yeah, I had some confidence too. I felt like Tottenham were coming in kind of drained from having played Chelsea and then obviously having played Inter Milan, whereas we, like you said, we had a Europa League game last week, so we could rest a lot of our starters. I mean, the only guys who really played any big role in terms of the first team guys were Guendouzi and Ramsey and Rob Holding, obviously. But I felt pretty good going into the game, and then we lined up in kind of a 3-4-3, I would say. We had Aubameyang, Iwobi, Mkhitaryan, and then we went with Kolasinac, Xhaka, Torreira, Bellerin, and then 3 at the back. What was your kind of thought with the setup for the Tottenham game? Were you kind of surprised at how we set up, with 1 forward, or did you think that that's kind of how we were going to go? Because I know Lacazette was coming off an injury.
I wasn't super surprised just because that, you know, without any other left back options and Kolasinac not being the most faithful and trustworthy left back, I kind of saw it coming for us to come out like that with 3 at the back to give him a little bit more solidity. Um, just to speak on him for a second, I mean, he doesn't for someone that gets as far forward as he does, I don't understand why he can't also get back. Um, but we had to have something in there to prevent, the left side from being completely overloaded. So I kind of saw it coming.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting point because obviously he's really good going forward, and we'll talk about him in the United game as well, and just how many chances he was able to create. But at the same time, he does leave a little bit of a vulnerability going back. So I can certainly understand the thought process with 3 at the back. And I think it just did give us a little bit more support to our midfield as well, just in terms of having 3 center backs able to pass the ball out of the back. And so kind of alleviated that burden as well. But, I thought we came out on fire in the Tottenham game. I mean, we were just on top of them. They weren't able to really connect any string of passes. And I was really impressed with our pressing game. We got the penalty, and it was clear handball, and we scored. And then we had a couple of chances to make it 2 or 3 to nil. After that first 15, 20 minutes when it was only 1-0, did you have any uneasiness that it was only that? I mean, I know it sounds weird to say, hey, we're only up 1-0 on Tottenham, but just based on how much energy we were expending, were you concerned at all?
Oh, I was very concerned. Just speaking historically, Arsenal, it's very much a definition of us to have all these chances, play so well and not finish, and only be up 1-0 or be down, or be tied, because we just can't put the game away. Even if it's early, we can't take that big step. Get the penalty, go 1 up. Had so many chances before and after that, and we just couldn't put it in the net.
And yeah, and then you have Eric Dyer. He scored a header off a corner. I mean,
No, let's stop now. He scored a header from a free kick for Son's first dive.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, it wasn't even a corner; it was a free kick. Yeah, Son, the first of many dives, I would say. Of course, the pundits paid no attention to that. I mean, as it seems, anytime someone does it against Arsenal, it's totally fine. But if we're doing it, it's same old Arsenal always cheating. So it's funny how that works. But so they scored off that free kick, and I mean, candidly, I thought Bernd Leno probably should have saved that. I don't know exactly what he was trying to do because
I think it spun off the grass really weird on him. You know, it was whipped in near post, flicked in, 5 yards in front of him. I don't know how Eric Dyer got so unmarked in that area, but that's a whole other point. But I mean, it's flicked off the ground at pace near post, and I think it just skipped weird, and he judged it wrong.
Yeah, I think he judged it. He judged it wrong, and his hand placement was weird. It was almost like he was trying to hit it upwards instead of kind of trying to punch it out or trying to hit it out for a corner.
Yeah, I think with the spin, he was expecting it to come right to his chest, and then when it went, low into the right, he really couldn't get there in time.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Leno, he's one of those guys you got to almost take the good with the bad, and that he can be a really good shot stopper, good distributor, but maybe he has these moments where you do question him a little bit. So, after that goal, I thought this was kind of the turning point in the match. Eric Dyer went to the corner and shushed some of the home fans, and he was celebrating with some of his teammates. And then Lichtsteiner, the shithouser that he is, and I say that in the most affectionate way ever, by the way, Lichtsteiner took umbrage with that. And then I don't know if he tapped Dyer or said something, but it kind of erupted into a little bit of a skirmish, and you saw pushing and shoving. I think my favorite part of the whole thing was Matteo Guendouzi sprinting 50 yards to the corner flag to get involved. Just because it reminds you of watching college football and seeing that sort of stuff. You saw Aaron Ramsey getting involved with Dele Alli. You saw all sorts of stuff going on, but I liked it because it just showed, hey, we're not going to be disrespected for as much as, things like that are hard to quantify. I do think it kind of showed something that, yes, you score, but we're not going to take your shit. And, we're not going to let you come into our house and disrespect us. So I thought it was great. Dyer said to Ramsey, go back to the bench, which later came back to haunt him. But what was your kind of takeaway from that moment? Did you think, well, we're showing some fight, or did you think, hey guys, we just conceded a goal, no need for this?
No, I would go with the showing some fight side of it. I think there's nothing wrong with some good shithousery as long as it's on your team. Lichtsteiner, I feel like he's always been that guy. I haven't watched him a lot throughout his career. I mean, I've known about him, but I haven't watched him a ton before Arsenal, and I feel like he's always getting into it with people, it's a good fight to have. So the fact that was his first North London derby, his first real big rivalry game to even play a part in it, and he's over there instigating this entire ordeal. And then past that, the heart of Guendouzi, not only after the game celebrating, hanging out the window with the fans, but also the 30-yard sprint from the bench to get involved. I mean, so much heart in him. I like him a lot. He's growing on me a lot.
Oh yeah, I think you're not alone in that. I think he's kind of becoming an Arsenal kind of cult status hero. But that moment, I feel like just kind of riled the crowd up too. It made it feel like a real North London derby where you feel that animosity. And I think you and I can kind of attest to this, having grown up in the US. Like with college football, with a rivalry game, you see that stuff all the time. You'll see the two teams get together at midfield before a game and kind of talk some shit and jaw at each other and do that sort of thing. And I think it only adds to it. And then a few minutes later, Son dive number 2. And I mean, this was pretty criminal in how he did it too. I mean, Rob Holding came nowhere near him, but he dragged the ball back and then just fell over. And you knew it was Mike Dean, so you knew he's just looking for a reason to
make it about him.
Yeah, to make the show about him. I mean, every time he officiates a game, you can see his stupid over-the-top hand motions, his his pettiness when it comes to like the ball placement, and then his willingness to just make a big call just for the sake of doing it. When they got that penalty and made it 2-1, what was your take on, how the game was going to unfold from there? Were you thinking, oh man, this one kind of got away from us?
Yeah, it was here we go again. It was just that feeling that although we had been dominating up until that point, even after the first Tottenham goal, we've been still dominating. And then it was like, okay, Mike Dean's giving this away from us, and now we're going to be chasing it the entire time. Tottenham's really good on the break. This might get ugly. So I was really scared at that point, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think I had a little bit of trepidation then, because it did feel like one of those games where we would expend a lot of effort early on and we needed to cash in. And then all of a sudden they go into halftime 2-1 up, and you're thinking, Jesus, I mean, we played as good as we could play for about 20, 25 minutes, and yet we have nothing to show for it. But it's interesting because you mentioned, oh God, here we go again. And I think you and I have had that feeling maybe at different points this season. Just, I think it's a lot of it is kind of PTSD from previous seasons where things wouldn't go our way and we'd collapse. But I think this year's team has shown a little bit more resiliency in those situations where they just don't get down on themselves. But at the same time, they've also not gone into a single game at halftime in the Premier League leading. So at this point, you almost kind of expect it. I mean, we come out of halftime, we make the 2 changes. Iwobi out, Mkhitaryan out, Ramsey and Lacazette in. I was kind of surprised at that. I know that Emery's made changes at halftime, but to make 2 changes at halftime, that's drastic. And I was wondering how that was going to work formationally. I mean, how did you see? I mean, what was your thought on those substitutions, I should say?
I mean, I was very, very happy with these substitutions. I'm not, even before Unai Emery, I've never really been a fan of the small stats, the possession numbers or the amount of shot attempts as a barometer of how good the game's going. You can definitely tell that Unai Emery is more in tune to winning the game and picking up the points than maybe leading at halftime. We've been a second half team all season. Him being able to see the mistake, if there's a mistake, or see the opening and make the adjustment. So I was really, really ecstatic when I saw both of the subs coming on. I have not been too impressed with Mkhitaryan so far this year. I mean, I know there's tons of talent and ability there. We all know that, but it's like right now it's like he's getting in his own way. And Iwobi hadn't really showed a ton so far in the first half. I mean, a lot of running, but not a lot of finished products. So, I mean, I was really, really happy when the 2 came on.
Yeah, I agree. And we can certainly – I wanted to talk about Mkhitaryan later on as well, just in terms of his future at the club. But I totally agree that I thought it was the right move. I was just surprised at how early he made it. And then from there on, we really just kind of took control of the game. I mean, you saw, formationally speaking, Ramsey kind of played right behind Aubameyang and Lacazette, kind of playing as a front two. But what was interesting about how they set up was Aubameyang and Lacazette almost played a little bit wider than a normal front two. They kind of played to run the channels. And in doing so, they left a lot of open space for Ramsey to run into. And I think that's kind of where he thrives, where he can run into space, where he can benefit from a center forward holding up the ball or good link-up play. And it kind of allowed him to roam. And that's ultimately what led to that second goal, Aubameyang's second goal. Ramsey makes a run behind the central defense. Bellerin played a beautiful ball around the corner. Ramsey runs onto it and then, plays it to Aubameyang for a gorgeous one-time finish.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's sad that it took until, he's out of contract at the end of the year before we finally realized what his best role is. And knowing how much he likes to bolt forward, it's disappointing that we finally figured this out and, now he's gone in 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it's maybe one of those things where we come back to the table, but certainly, we can get into that as well. But so it's 2-2 for a while. And then, we, in quick succession, we get the Lacazette goal and then the Torreira goal. I mean, the Lacazette goal, again, great play from Ramsey to get into space and then basically to have the awareness to not only nicked the ball off of the Tottenham defender, I think it was Foyth, and then look up for Lacazette right away. And to be honest, when Lacazette got the ball, I thought the chance kind of got away from him. So I thought maybe he'll hold the ball up and then he'll wait to bring his others into play, but he turned onto his left foot. And in some this, I mean, it was just the perfect goal because it went off of Dyer, and he's just a little shit. And then went into that bottom corner. I just felt pure emotion on his face after he scored. I think that really resonated with me.
Oh, I agree. I'm with you. I'm glad that it came off of Dyer and no one else. Just knowing that his shin led to us winning. But I mean, even furthermore, just you could see the exactly what you're talking about on Lacazette's face. But let me just fast forward to Lucas Torreira's goal and the reaction after that. The goal seems like it came from a lot of hard work and just him getting forward, and then pulls the shirt off, screaming in front of the fans, slides down. I mean, it was very, very moving, to say the least.
It was one of those iconic moments. You felt like this guy became an Arsenal hero in one game. But he's been great all season, don't get me wrong, but just like I feel like any player needs that moment to really connect with fans, and I think this was it. And it was great because he had dominated midfield all game. I mean, he had really nullified Sissoko and Dele Alli and Eriksson. I mean, he was in there nipping it. From the first minute, he nipped at Dele Alli, got a tackle in, stole the ball. There was another point in the first half where he stole the ball away, got tackled, kept going, evaded pressure, and then was able to clear his lines. So I felt like he deserved that goal, and it showed a really good game awareness too, because a lot of people are saying, well, why is your defensive midfielder so far up the field? But I think he realized how high up Spurs were playing, and so that there would be openings, and he just picked and chose his moment. And Aubameyang with a beautiful pass through to him, and it was a gorgeous finish. I have to say, it was that was not an easy finish to hit it far post, and there's actually a video of his dad watching it back home and celebrating it, and I thought it was just the perfect cap to that day, because I felt like everything we put into that game emotionally, tactically, and physically really, really just paid off. And I think it was the first time you really saw the Unai Emery vision really shining through. You've seen it in flashes, but maybe not for almost a whole game.
Yeah, no, what an absolute blessing of a signing he has been. I mean, you're absolutely right. If he wasn't already in the heart, of Arsenal supporters, you score against North London, or you score in the North London derby like that to make it 4-2. I mean, legend status already. And you're right, it was not an easy finish at all. But he's going to be one for now and for the future. I'm so excited that we signed him. I'm so excited that he's developed such a partnership with Xhaka so far.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a 22-year-old defensive midfielder who already played in Italy, one of the best leagues in the world, and is still yet to hit his peak. And that's kind of the amazing part of his game. I mean, he can get a lot better. There's just things in his game he can iron out. But his passing ability, every pass he makes, he's looking forward. But at the same time, he also reads the game like Conte. He knows where the play is coming, and he gets there before the danger. So I think his trajectory is really, really big. And I think after that game, you kind of saw what it meant to the players. The celebrations afterwards. Guendouzi kissing Aubameyang's boot, and the dressing room selfies, and like you said, Guendouzi, sticking his head out of the car. I just thought it was that unifying moment that the team and the fans needed, because I think everything has just been so disjointed with all the Arsene Wenger in or out stuff over the past few years that we didn't really have moments like this where everyone was united.
Yeah, no, it's a good feeling, because for the last couple of years it's been, even here in the States, there's been the people that backed Wenger versus didn't back Wenger. So this good and united feeling, this feeling of we're actually supporting a winning team again. What is it, 20 games unbeaten? It's surreal, because, the first time you had me on this podcast, you and I were talking about how our fanship both kind of started after the glory years. And to now be able to really, really enjoy watching Arsenal play, it's a breath of fresh air, to say the least.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think, obviously we temper everything with, we're less than halfway through the Premier League season. There's still a lot of football to be played, but I think it also kind of helped quiet this narrative of Arsenal, haven't beaten a big team yet, because obviously we got the draw against Liverpool, and then we had those 2 early losses, which, to be honest, I think if those games were played later in the season, I think we'd have a significantly better chance. But it's the way the scheduling worked out, and I think it almost allowed us to kind of regroup and get ourselves together. And it was always going to be difficult to go from that Spurs performance to a midweek game at Old Trafford. United had an additional day of rest. And, obviously just the amount of emotional and physical energy we expended. After that Tottenham game, what was your thought going into the United game? Were you expecting, I don't want to say a letdown, but just maybe a little bit of a drop in performance?
I mean, not so much. I mean, I felt like we really took care of ourselves well in the Tottenham game. Came out of it, really well with a limited amount of injuries or problems. I was flying high going into the United game. I really expected to get more out of it, especially, watching the first 20 minutes or so of the United game where we were just massively, massively all over them. Going into it and watching the first little bit of it, I was very inclined to think that we were going to go away with the 3 points and get 9 from 9.
Yeah, no, I thought we handled the first bit of that United game really intelligently. I think we kind of picked our spots because obviously they were playing for, Mourinho's job to some extent. I mean, I don't know exactly how close to the firing line he is, but they were always going to come out and try to press us. But I think aside from a few moments early on, we really handled it well. And then we got that early goal and you're thinking, okay, we're with Mustafi, I mean, it was a fortunate goal, no doubt. You don't see De Gea make those kinds of mistakes, but at the same time, goal's a goal. And then you think to yourself, all right, well, we can defend this lead for a little while. But of course, I think, what was it? Martial dived to get the free kick, and then Ander Herrera offside, not called, of course, and United equalized soon after. And from there, you're kind of thinking, oh man, we had a lead at Old Trafford, gave it up pretty quickly. I wasn't sure we'd necessarily be able to recharge from there. And keeping in mind, we had no Granit Xhaka because due to yellow card suspension. Aaron Ramsey got hurt early first half. Rob Holding got hurt early first half. Were you kind of fearful at that point that just given the conditions, I know Mesut Ozil as well, that the game might get away from us a little bit?
Not get away from us necessarily, but it was definitely a worrying sign. Rob Holding got injured in the silliest kind of way. I mean, the ball was going out of balance, and I think it was Jesse Lingard that just kind of runs through him. Aaron Ramsey, kind of a similar situation. It's kind of unfortunate for both of them, but I even feel worse for Rob Holding. But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I wasn't thinking at that point, we were going to get blown out. So I have a lot of faith in Guendouzi and when Lichtsteiner came on as well. I have a lot of faith in their solidity just based on the performance I've seen so far. So even without Xhaka, I felt really good still. I felt like we were really moving the ball well. United wasn't really getting at us all that much. It was just a series of unfortunate events, to say the least.
Yeah, the goal to give up was just pretty disappointing. But I think we went into halftime at 1-1, and then we brought Mkhitaryan on for Ramsey, and it was just a weird game overall, don't you think? I mean, it was just a weird game in terms of how it unfolded. And
well, the thing that I was most disappointed about in the entire game was that Herrera offside goal where no one on our team, I mean, he drugged the ball back across the 6 with no pace on it. And I think it passed 3 Arsenal players before, United player buried it in the net. So, I mean, the lack of awareness for the second ball there, offside or not, it felt like we just turned off at that point. Same thing after we scored the second goal. We just turned off for that half a second. For youth reasons, tiredness reasons, whatever you want to call it, turning off for that half second is just what's killing us right now.
Yeah, especially at this level. I mean, you're playing against top competition. You can't afford to have that mental lapse. And Yeah, Mkhitaryan came on, and it was kind of a stop-start second half. I mean, Marcus Rojo should have been sent off at least 2 different times. I mean, he had one really, really bad challenge early on in the game that he got away with. He had another one on Lacazette, which as part of the goal that Lacazette scored. And yes, he scored it. It wasn't an own goal. It went off his shin. I think everyone who's seen it knows that, except for the FA apparently. But we got a little bit of fortuitous bounce there, but at the same time, it probably should have been a red card for Marcus Rojo. And it's just kind of what they were letting, what Andre Mariner was letting United get away with all game. So we get that goal to go 2-1 up, the team's hyped, and then literally off the kickoff within 15 seconds, you see Jesse Lingard score a goal. I mean, my head just dropped after that.
Happened. I didn't even see what happened. Like, literally, we scored the go-ahead goal, and then I think I was getting on Twitter or something to send something out, and before I could even tweet it, we'd already given something up. I mean, it was so bad of a mental check out there.
Yeah, I think if I remember, they hit a long ball to Lukaku, and he kind of held it up, and then our defense won it off of him, and then Kolasinac, I'm not sure what he was trying to do. He tried to pass it back to Leno, but didn't really get much on it. Lingard was there to put it away. I mean, I can't put any fault on Leno there. I mean, I don't think you anticipate your defender mishitting the ball that badly. And then 2-2, that's when you kind of start to get a little fearful, because you're thinking there's only so many times this team can, just with its limited firepower given the injuries, there's only so many times this team can keep rallying. And you could sense the fatigue was there. Definitely, it started to set in. And, obviously then United really brought their big, I don't want to say they're big boys, but in terms of physicality, they're big boys. They brought in Pogba and Lukaku and Fellaini, and you kind of wondered how we were going to be able to cope with that threat. I mean, I think all things considered, we coped with it fine in open play. I think maybe that's the frustrating part about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we coped with it just fine. I was just as well kind of disappointed or worried whenever they both came on, or all three really came on, because Rob Holding, the tallest player in our team, was already off. I think Mustafi's maybe 6'1", Lichtensteiner's not tall, Kolasinac maybe 6 foot, 6'1". I don't even think he's 6 foot, to be honest. So I was really worried when those three came on for those late, Fergie time, Fellaini time, goals that we give up, like the last time we played United when Fellaini came on and won it for them. So I was really worried going into that point when they came on, but I felt like we coped with it very well. I felt like we were still in the ascendancy, even to the last minute of the game.
Yeah, I really do think we controlled the game, and I don't think any moment summed that up more than Guendouzi, probably exhausted, but still maneuvering the ball, running past Fellaini, getting his hair literally tugged, which Robert Huth got suspended 3 games for doing to Fellaini once. Fellaini does it to Guendouzi. Not only does Fellaini not get a red card, he doesn't even get a yellow card. And the FA is not taking any retrospective action because apparently Andre Mariner saw the play and just didn't give anything. I mean, I thought that was crazy to me. I mean, that was disgusting. Even if an Arsenal player did it, I would think it was pathetic.
No, I didn't know Andre Mariner saw it and didn't give it. I thought he didn't see it. But for me, for a former long-haired guy like Fellaini to pull the long hair of the youngster, I mean, it's just like, of all people, even though Fellaini is kind of a bastard, of all people, he used to have long hair himself. You wouldn't expect them to do that because he knows how much of a piece of shit move it is.
Yeah, it's just a dirty play. It has nothing to do with the game. I mean, he's a 19-year-old kid running circles around your $200 million price midfield, and you pull that kind of shit. It just rubbed me the wrong way. But at the same time, it was indicative of how United wanted to play that game. They wanted
that game was real dirty.
It was very dirty. I mean, the play on that Holding got injured on, I think that was one of those that Rashford could have very well let up on. And
was it Rashford? It wasn't Jesse Lingard?
I believe it was Rashford, okay. Yeah. And I think that was
really lit up. He was going nowhere.
Yeah, he was going out of bounds, and he's still kind of riding him out, and then that thing happens. And, Ramsey, I don't remember how he got hurt. I think he might have gotten hurt trying to make a tackle, but it was pretty clear that Mourinho's strategy was, hey, kick them and see what happens. And, we're at Old Trafford, so a referee's not going to send anyone off, and Rojo and Fellaini are living proof of that. It was one of those games where we dominated it, and so for that reason, it was frustrating to come out with a draw. Also, losing Holding for an extended period of time, I mean, that's a huge blow, and we can get into that in a little bit. Losing Ramsey as well. But I think going back to something that you and I have talked about, at the beginning of the 3-game stretch, Bournemouth away, Tottenham home, United away, I think we both would have been very happy with 7 out of 9 points from those 3 games.
Oh, absolutely. I think on the last podcast you had me on, that's what we both agreed we were expecting or hoping for was 7 out of 9. Neither one of us really knew which of the two we were going to get those points from, but we were both expecting 7. So, not a bad result from such a quick succession of tough games. I mean, Bournemouth is playing well. We were on the road. To come home and beat Spurs the way we did, and then, playing midweek versus United at Old Trafford and playing as well as we did. I mean, we could have easily been too tired and lost that game 3-0 at United. So I was really happy to keep the streak alive, keep the unbeaten run going, as long as we can.
And the interesting thing is, like, in this game, we ended up finishing the game with Lacazette, Aubameyang, Mkhitaryan all on the pitch at the same time. Whereas in the Spurs game, we ended with Ramsey, Aubameyang, Lacazette. So the formation, I mean, just our ability to adapt to different situations and different formations is actually really quite impressive. I mean, the elephant in the room is the fact that Mesut Ozil's out with a back spasm, and I know he's got a history of back injury, so I'm not going to question the injury because I mean, who am I to question an athlete's injury? But just with utilizing these other guys, Iwobi, Mkhitaryan, Ramsey, they each have very different strengths, but at the same time, you have to try to figure out a way to get the best out of all of them. Iwobi's kind of hit a little bit of a rough patch lately, just in terms of recent performances. But I think the guy that you mentioned earlier that I kind of want to talk about in a little more depth is Mkhitaryan, because he's a very divisive figure, I would say, amongst Arsenal fans. I think.
Describe it.
Yeah, I was trying to be nice. I mean, you look at the context we brought him in. It was a straight swap for Alexis Sanchez.
Who, to the credit, is not doing anything for United either.
Oh, yeah. I think both teams are kind of thinking, well, the swap really didn't work out for either of us. But in terms of what I thought Mkhitaryan would bring, I thought he'd bring a little bit more control in the final third. And I thought he might be a little bit better in retaining possession. And I think that's kind of where I've been disappointed is,
his technique is surprisingly bad.
It is, and that's kind of what's interesting to me is, like, he loses the ball very easily at times. His way to pass is really, really poor, especially when Bellerin's overlapping and he's trying to play him into space. He often sells him short, and Bellerin obviously often gets a pretty bad tackle as a result because he's got to lunge in to try to save the pass. So at the same time, he's got these moments of, like, ridiculous quality. You remember the goal against Chelsea where he scored with his left foot. He scored against Wolves with admittedly it was a free kick that no one touched, but he's got these moments of brilliance, and he can score goals and get assists. But at the same time, it's the general product that I think is sometimes lacking from him. And I mean, he's 29 or 30, so there's no upside here. I mean, he is what he is. But he's one of those players that's on high wages, and he's a big enough stature to where you feel like you do have to play him sometimes because of what he can offer. But I don't know. I just don't see the consistency with him.
Neither do I. For him, being his size, being his lack of pace, he's built his reputation in his career on being very precise, very technical, very intelligent with the ball type player. And we just haven't seen that from last season even into now. It's just, I think a definition in one play of his entire season, and I think it was against Bournemouth when he's breaking down the left side of the goal, and with the left foot shot, he kicks it against his plant foot. Which happens, you can't really blame him for that, but I think it's a definition of the season because to get into the space he was in that particular play was outstanding. and then the heavy touch away, kicks it against himself out for a goal kick. It's just kind of, it's almost rolling your eyes whenever you think about it. And I think that's how his entire season's been, unfortunately.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys. I mean, if you want to maintain some control in the game, I can understand why Emery uses him. And at the beginning of the season, he did have good link up with Bellerin, but so sometimes you play him on that right hand side, knowing he's going to tuck in and give you a little bit more, control in midfield. But at the same time, you lose a lot in terms of the ability to, to get wide and to get crosses into the box, to the extent that we try to play that way. And in order to get him in, then you're moving someone else out of position. You're either moving an Aubameyang or you're moving an Aubameyang or you're moving a Lacazette or something like that. And so I just don't know where he fits moving forward. And he's still, I don't know if he's someone you try to sell in the summer and see what you can get for him. But at his age, I'm not necessarily sure what you can get for him.
I don't see us selling him, a year or a year and a half after we got him. I just don't see that happening unless, the board has just become absolutely ruthless, which would be quite a change of pace. With that being said, I don't think they are. I can see him staying a couple of years playing as kind of like a Welbeck level bitten part type player. I don't think he's going to be the excellent player that he was at Dortmund for us. I just don't see that coming out of him, especially at this age.
Yeah, and I think maybe to some extent the physicality of the league doesn't necessarily suit him. I think in Germany, I mean, it's a physically demanding league, but in terms of being pressed and having, trying to maintain possession while, against very strong players, he does struggle with that. I think he flourishes when there's lots of open space to utilize, and against, against most of the teams that Arsenal plays, teams like that aren't necessarily going to leave tons of space for Arsenal to play in. You have to be able to maneuver those tight spaces, and you can't give up the ball so easily under pressure and then put your team under the threat of a counterattack. So, he's just one of those guys. I don't know if I think he knows he's probably a squad player. He's not a guaranteed first choice starter, but I think for a team like ours, we do need more of a natural winger, I feel, in that position.
Yeah, after only one transfer window, I mean, we kind of knew that Unai wasn't going to have everything that he might have wanted from one transfer window. So, I mean, we've got a little bit of time to continue working. But we definitely do need a solid right winger for sure.
Yeah, and then you got to figure how does Ozil fit all into all of this, and what's kind of your takeaway with, Ozil and not the injury so much, but how we played against these teams without him. Because some of the analysts were saying, well, I don't know how Ozil would have played in that game against Tottenham, and which I think is a little silly because I think last year against Tottenham at home he played really well. So it's difficult. It's one of those things that can't be proven. You can't prove how we would have played with him there because he wasn't there. So we can only go off of the result we had. But where do you think he fits into this team moving forward?
I'm sorry, say that question again?
No, I was saying, like, where do you think Ozil fits into this team moving forward? Because we played well against two really good teams without him.
Yeah, but one could argue we would play even better with him. You can't. It's really hard to have that. One could also argue that he disappears in big games. So it's kind of 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other.
Right.
That being said, he is the face of the club. On the money that he's on, we're not going to sell him in the near term. That would just be, it would make us look even more like a fool. So, I mean, he's going to get fit into it, but I think Unai Emery needs a couple of transfer windows before he has the squad really, purring how he wants them to. That being said, after, maybe after next summer, if Mesut Ozil is still not really playing the way that Unai wants him to play, maybe the following summer, that'd be summer, 2020 at that time, or January 2020, maybe at that point, if he's still, not really going with the style of play and the style of pressing that Unai Emery wants. I mean, at this point, he's already 29 or 30, I believe. So, I mean, he's already at the end of his best years as a creative player.
Yeah, I think you saw it more in the United game. We didn't have someone necessarily to make that final pass or to maintain possession or just kind of link everything up. And I think Ozil actually would have done well in a game like that because United had a pretty weak back line and not too many technical players in midfield. So, it is one of those things, like you said. I mean, he gets the rap of not being a good big game player, although the stats don't necessarily bear that out. I think, there's also a lot of times his game is predicated on those around him. And so if we have no control in midfield, he really struggles to get involved. And, kind of speaking of the midfield, what did you make of Guendouzi's performance against United? I thought he started a little bit slow just because I think thought he would have more time on the ball, and he got pressed a couple times and was lucky to get bailed out by foul given against United. But I thought he really grew into the game, and I thought in the second half he was probably one of our best players. And at 19 years old, I think it's crazy given where he was last season.
Did you hear some of the commentary on NBC when he was playing about him? Did you hear any of that?
I might have missed it. Arlo White makes me really upset, so I try to tune him out whenever possible.
Well, what the commentary was saying was spot on. What I think of Guendouzi is, he's a young kid. There's a lot of potential in him. He's going to give the ball away. He's going to give the ball away and then go win it back and give it away again. He tries things that maybe, he can't quite perform, but he's confident enough to try it. So, I think long-term he's got a ton of potential, and I think his performance in United was very, very promising for somebody that, just last season was where he was and is now playing versus Old Trafford at Old Trafford late in the game, in a close game, in the English Premier League, not in a cup or anything like that. So, I mean, he's come a long way, and I was very impressed with his performance the entire time.
Yeah, I don't think any of us saw him being this good this early. I think we all know Sven Mislintat has a really good eye for picking out talent, and it goes without saying what he did at Dortmund with guys like Julian Weigl, Ousmane Dembele, all these types of players. And then he saw him in preseason, and he thought, okay, this kid's got something. And then he saw him play against City and Chelsea to start the season and not look out of his element. And I think Unai Emery has really managed him well in terms of making sure he gets quality game time, not just in the Cups and Europa, but also in the Premier League, while also starting to solidify this Xhaka Torreira midfield. Because I do think the Xhaka Torreira midfield is kind of our future, at least for the next season or two, while Guendouzi develops and maybe he can become the guy who plays next to Torreira. I think we did miss Xhaka yesterday because for as well as we played, we definitely did struggle with our possession. And granted, a lot of that is due to the weather conditions. And I think that's certainly fair. But we just didn't have that player who was necessarily playing between the lines and hitting those long diagonal passes and getting our fullbacks into space. And do games like yesterday, for as well as Guendouzi played, are those the games that maybe Xhaka's influence shows the most?
I think so, because I think some of his passing, although Guendouzi is a good passer of the ball, some of his passing that Xhaka can just pull out of nowhere would have definitely been sought after in that game, maybe to unlock their defense late on. I think we did miss him. I mean, Guendouzi, like I said, played good, but I do think we missed him.
I mean, if you think about that second half, we played with no Ozil, no Ramsey, no Xhaka. You basically played without your starting midfield from last season, the entire starting midfield, and you still went to Old Trafford, got a draw, and arguably come out feeling kind of disappointed, thinking you could have gotten something more out of it. And I think it shows a kind of an adjustment in the mindset, not just of the team, but of the fans, that, we are coming to expect good things out of this team. But at the same time, I think Unai Emery kind of has his pulse on this has his finger on the pulse of this team and knows what they need and when to be harsh and when not to be harsh. I mean, he's criticized his team before in terms of being a little bit defensively weak and needing to improve. But I think my main takeaway from yesterday's game was his post-game interview when he was talking about Sead Kolasinac and, the mistake he made that led to the United second goal. And Emery was saying that Kolasinac was walking back to the dugout with his head down, and Emery went up to him and said, it's okay. You made a mistake. It happens. Don't be so down on yourself. And I just think knowing people and knowing how to work with people, I thought that was a really promising thing to see from a manager who's new to this club and new to this league.
I agree. I mean, it's very promising, but at the same time, I cannot wait to have Nacho Monreal back.
Yes and no. I mean, he is also on the wrong side of 30, and I think with a back five, I like Kolasinac because I think he's a good left wing back. In a back four, yeah, Monreal is probably your guy, but doesn't it make you worried to kind of rely on a 32, 33-year-old fullback?
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, Juventus has been doing it for years, relying on these older defenders. I mean, in defense, you need experience, and Nacho Monreal, he doesn't make a ton of mistakes. Now, maybe athletically, he's not, where he was 5 years ago, but he's Mr. Consistent when he is playing. And I want that solidity to come back on the left side, whether it's in a back four or a back five.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure. I know he's back in full training, so hopefully, we see him soon. I know Koscielny's in training as well. I mean, candidly, I'm just not sure what you can expect from Koscielny coming off an Achilles injury. I mean, from every athlete I've seen in professional sports coming off an Achilles injury, you never quite come back to the same level of explosiveness. And a lot of his defensive game was based on pace. And, we do have a little bit of a center back issue with Rob Holding out, presumably for the rest of the season. I mean, I've not read anything to the contrary. I know a lot of the English papers are saying it's a cruciate ligament injury. So you've got to assume he's probably out for the season. You look at the center back situation, you have Mustafi and Socrates, Koscielny to, whatever extent he is healthy. Mavropanos has had a growing injury since August. I don't know what growing injury that was, but that's I don't know if he tore something down there. I don't want to think about it, but you've got guys like Monreal and Lichtsteiner and Kolasinac who can play there in a pinch. I mean, are you concerned about that position at all? Do you think we dip into the market, or do you think we're kind of good where we are?
I mean, in January, I wouldn't say we'll be dipping into the market, but I definitely say it's something we need to work on for next season. If we don't sign one in the summer, I will be absolutely astounded. Having Kolasinac, who hasn't really worked out, and Nacho, who is, like you said, about 32, I'd be very, very surprised.
Yeah, I think left back is definitely a position we address, and I do think center back. I mean, I don't know if the Rob Holding injury necessarily speeds up a lot of this stuff, so we'll certainly wait and see. But I know we're gonna wrap up pretty soon because we both got to get out of here. But just looking at our upcoming games, we've got Huddersfield on Saturday, Karabag in the Europa League, and then we've got Southampton and then Spurs in the League Cup. So, I mean, that's at least the Huddersfield and Southampton games are pretty manageable. I think Karabag, if we play any first team guys, I'll be stunned.
Players, I'm giving up my fanship.
Yeah, it just makes no sense. I mean, it's like
not only have we already qualified, we've already won the group. So there's play our U12s. It doesn't matter. Like, just put 11 people in a shirt on the field.
I would go with a lot of the young guys who finished the game against Vorskla. So, I mean, I know we started with Guendouzi and Ramsey. I wouldn't even risk them. I'd put Smith Rowe, Saka, the young forward / winger, Willock, Nketiah, Maitland-Niles. I would put Pleguezuelo from the center back from the youth team. I mean, I would not play a single senior player because I just don't think there's any point. And I also think you give those guys, even though it's a meaningless game, get them some experience, get their confidence going. I would certainly lean that way. But I do want to get your predictions on the Huddersfield game at least. I know, it's obviously it's tough to come off of a United game on a Wednesday and then you've got Huddersfield on a Saturday morning. So you've got a very quick turnaround. I mean, do you think we see any letdown after these two really physically taxing games, or do you think we kind of come out early and take care of business?
I think we'll take care of business. Huddersfield has let in 29 goals this season. They've only won, 2 games. 26 goals, and they've only won 2 games this entire season. I think we come out firing. Hopefully Ozil comes back, gets back into some form. But I think we come out firing and win. I say 3-1.
Yeah, 3-1 sounds like a good score. I think we see Aubameyang and Lacazette get on the score sheet. one of them will get 2 goals. I'm not sure which one, but yeah, I think 3-1 sounds about right. I would love a clean sheet just for confidence. And we are coming into that busy holiday period of games where, it's going to come really, really quickly, a lot of games. And I think this is where Unai Emery is going to get tested because he's never had to deal with a busy winter period before. So knowing how to manage your resources, manage your squad, make sure players aren't overextended. I mean, Bellerin's going to need a rest soon. He's played every single Premier League game. So you will need to get Lichtsteiner a game or two at right back. What are you going to do with center back in midfield? So there's certainly some interesting dilemmas for him. But I think all in all, I think our main takeaway today is that you and I are both very happy with the direction things are going and being able to get 7 out of 9 from these 3 games. I think all things considered, that's a very positive step for us.
And how about the little magician Luka Modric with the Ballon d'Or? How about that?
That is true. Let's throw out a shout out to Luka. I think that was it was an award. You can always give it to Messi. I mean, he probably deserves it every year, but I think Modric was so special this year. What he did in the World Cup and for Real Madrid, I don't have any issue with him winning. So, and then, I mean, I'm not even going to get into this much. We can get into this later on. Obviously, U.S. Soccer hired Greg Berhalter as their head coach after conducting a thorough process where one candidate was interviewed and one candidate was interviewed and one candidate was given a token interview a week before this was announced. So certainly we can get into that later. I mean, that'll get me going for a couple hours, so I don't want to waste everyone's time with that. Might do a separate podcast just on the inefficiency of U.S. soccer, who is currently getting sued by the U.S. Soccer Foundation. So that's something interesting to follow. But on that note, I will wrap up. And Zach, why don't you tell the folks where they can find you on Twitter?
I actually changed it up. So at ZMTaylor13, at ZMTaylor13 on Twitter.
There you go. You can find me at UFGoonerAJ. You can find the podcast at EurosnobPod. Twitter.com/EurosnobPod, iTunes. You can find us there. You can find us on Podomatic. Rate, subscribe, forward on to your friends. We certainly love any feedback you have. And, certainly on behalf of myself and Zach, we wish you guys a really good holiday period. I'm sure we'll talk to you before the holidays, but regardless, whatever holiday you celebrate, we wish you the best. And Zach, you got any final words?
Let's finish out this year strong. Hardest game we have coming up, December 29th versus Liverpool. Let's see if we can finish 2018 strong.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.